and good evening. Welcome to another episode of the Upfront Mind, Body, and Soul podcast, where I am your host, Michelle Bolden Hammond. And listen, I am here today along with my special guest here from the Goddess Project. My sister, I'm gonna tell the audience how we got together on this and how important it is about wound care, wound healing, and trauma, and how these things affecting our body, especially when it comes down to our personal space. Alexandria Danielle, welcome with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
So, audience, I want to say, I collaborate. That's all what I do. I collaborate. I try to get the information. But this young lady here impacted me so much when I went to the Women of Excellence last year to the retreat. I was one of the speakers, and she was one of the speakers. And I'm going to get personal, and we're going to talk about personal. We're going to get personal when we're talking about our private area, our private parts, and different stuff. So I will put this disclaimer: if there are children in the room, we should be educating, but I just want you to be cognizant that there will be some words that we're not used to, but we're going to say that this is for education purposes because it's a stigma behind it too, as well. So, I'm all about debunking those stigmas, especially when it comes to our healing based upon trauma and different things. But Alexandra, I want to tell you that you impacted me so much. And I think I told you this prior to this, because I'm a female who had trauma based upon me not looking at it as being trauma. But now that I understand about wound healing, and now I myself is doing yoni steaming and, stuff in that area, you really opened my eyes up, and it really got me on a journey to where I'm at as being now a professor to the Holistic Professional of Color University as well. So that's thanks to you. You actually, what you said in that little bit of time of that workshop, it made me think, because I was having menstrual issues where it wasn't a lot of research being done. And the first thing from a male view, we're going to just take everything out. So I would say personally, I had a surgery because one, my iron count was low, was messing with my heart. But if I had known, but I didn't know. But when you brought that out, you said, "Oh, you happy about that you don't have those cycles anymore?" And when you went in deep into that just changed my whole demographic. So thank you for opening up to me. I really appreciate you for that, because now I can really say that I'm healing. I'm healed through that. Yes. From getting that awakening. So thank you so much for that. I give people their accolades right in there, but thank you so much for that. And I want you to start sharing with the audience, because in that realm, we talk about trauma, and people don't believe this is a spiritual thing too. So can you give the audience a brief summary of who you are and what you do, not only in the professions of you doing the doula, but there's other things that you do as well?
Yes. So my name is Alexandria Danielle. I am a native of Freeport, Bahamas, a Florida transplant. I've been here for quite some time. So I consider myself a lay healthcare worker. I am a licensed esthetician. I am a doula. I am a Reiki practitioner. I am an intuitive reader. I wear a lot of hats that all say that I am just here showing up for women. I founded a company called the Goddess Project in 2018. And the Goddess Project was founded in order to educate and empower the local women around me about their alternative options and supports. I originally founded the Goddess Project because I was advocating for young men that were HIV positive. Believe it or not, it did not start with women. It started with men, and men that identified as homosexual that were HIV positive. And I began actually as an advocate, just advocating for men, because a lot of the medications that we see people with advanced HIV disease, a lot of the medications that they're prescribed are trial medications. You know, um, they're trial, they're being tested, and a lot of times the young men are not aware. They sign the paperwork. I'm not saying that the paper isn't furnished, but they're not reading it. They're not understanding that the medications that they're taking are trials, and the side effects were detrimental. And so prior to 2018, it started as an advocacy. And then from there, I realized that there was just this gap, and there was no one standing in the gap educating people about things like bacterial vaginosis, yeast infections, and just the works, just the everyday things, phenomenons that we as women deal with that are almost taboo to talk about. And because they're taboo to talk about, our mothers give us minimum information. We learn from our friends, from our peers, what's what. And so a lot of the things that we grow up doing as women, the products that we use, as far as just washes, things like Summer's Eve that we all grew up, it's like, if you didn't have a Summer's Eve, you didn't have good, it was like, so a lot of these things that we as Black women, especially, were accustomed to doing for hygienic reasons and stuff are actually causing us like more problems than not. And so someone needed to stand in the gaps and almost like fill the role as health educator and sex educator without the titles and the certifications, because the more, as you know, the more you title up, the more the microscope is on what you're teaching. And the way that I have to stand in the gap for women, and the words that I have to use, and me being able to need it. Sometimes I need to talk to someone like a homegirl. Sometimes I need to be Danielle from the hood. Sometimes I need to be Alexandria from the Bahamas. Sometimes I need to be a graduate student from UF. I have to wear those different hats, and that microscope is on you. So the Goddess Project was formed to be this grassroots organization here in Gainesville to allow me to work cooperatively with other local organizations to just fill in that gap, provide advocacy and education to empower women on how they can have more body autonomy and take control of their health, not just womb health, but just in general, their entire life holistically.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that too when you said a body autonomy, because when you say holistically, it's the mind, it's the body, and it's the soul. And I always often tell people that all the time, that if one of those things are not in order, you're imbalance in the other parts too. So it's very important. Again, I love the fact when you talked about ceremonies, because in our culture here in the United States, and this was another example that I got from your workshop, we don't do the ceremonies here. We don't do the ceremonies for our young girls and walking them into their womanhood. And I really need to base that on home, because we look at it as being such a dirty thing, or we don't really get the full essence of it. Like you said, down in other countries, they use this. And can you talk a little bit more on that? I'm gonna let you go ahead with that one.
Yes. So, well, historically, we've seen that like coming of age ceremonies are necessary to help women and, well, girls and boys, forgive me, transition from one age group to the next, from girlhood to womanhood, or from boyhood to manhood. And in countries, for instance, they have things like the quinceañera. In some of the Jewish communities, they have the bar mitzvah. And there's a girl counterpart to the bar mitzvah, which I'm not going to say because I don't want to mispronounce, but there's a girl counterpart. In Africa, in different countries, there's different ceremonies that happen when girls come of age, sometimes to train them to become wives, oftentimes in our worldwide patriarchal society. These coming of age ceremonies are to prepare girls to be wives, right? I've found in my recent studies, as I've dug back, that a lot of times we know that like womanhood is almost synonymous with wife when we think about these kind of transitionary years, when we go through adolescence and we go through menstruation, and then what happens next? Next, we become a wife, right? And so here, because of our transplant status, because of the transatlantic slave trade, mainly in some migrations, so on and so forth, of us Afro descendant people, we are not in touch with what ceremonies would be. And so it's imperative that we create spaces for young women to become, because we are more conscious now, but also for us women, us 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, us women who weren't given that, also holding space for us to still have that. And so the workshop that you attended, Michelle, is one of many that I've designed to allow us to have those moments of, you know, this is my vagina. And I use in the workshop, trigger warning, we use the word pussy, and I explained in the workshop, the reason why I started using the word pussy is just because I felt like pussy is all inclusive. As Michelle mentioned, she's had a surgery that, some of her woman parts may no longer be there. And I found that that transition from perimenopausal to postmenopausal, sometimes because of surgery, and then other times natural, is a whole other like transition, coming of age, that in ancient civilizations had its own ceremonies as well, into elderhood, into being that person. And
Right.
now allowing that womb space to be a whole other receptacle and place of receiving, just divine impartation. And what that looked like. And so there's these gaps in our current society and civilization, period, but especially as us Afro descendant people, we're so far from what we are supposed to do. And so if you go to some like Caribbean countries, you mentioned yoni steaming, and even in Mexico and places like that, there's still remnants of some sort of holding that space and filling in the gaps, right? Um, and so that's what the Goddess Project is just striving to do, to create programs, to create workshops, to people to be seen, right? To understand their trauma, to understand how it's manifesting and showing up in their life. And then also our ancestral traumas. That's a big one that I've been dealing with. I just had my fourth child. Okay. I just had my fourth child. Sometimes I look at all my kids and I go, whoa, I got 4 kids. Wow. Wow. But I just had my fourth child, Faith. I had Faith in September. And Faith ended up, my birth with Faith ended up being birth trauma. And I had not experienced significant birth trauma prior. Some emotional birth trauma, just because of feeling as though I needed maybe more people to show up for me, but not so much like the physical birth trauma, the medical trauma, right? And so in my healing processes with the medical trauma, going through what I've been going through, I've been getting a lot of that like ancestral download energy of, this is what they went through. Imagine 150 years ago, if this same scenario happened, really even 50 years ago, really even yesterday in the wrong place, today, someone else might not have made it out. You wouldn't have been alive. Like, I look at me and my baby every day and I'm like, 150 years ago, we would not be here.
Right.
Because of, the marvel of modern day science, but there's just still so many gaps that it leaves. I kind of want to let you, I know I can go on.
It's fine. Well, we are going to take a quick break, but another project, something that you also work into as a doula. So we're going to take a quick break and we're going to come back, but we're going to talk about that, because we seeing that that's coming back more popular now with more holistic ways, and just want to share with the audience like some benefits of it. when I look at, I seen a friend of mine's did it last year when for her birth. It was amazing. But just wanted you to share on that, and then and that you do certain. Don't you teach that as well, right?
I teach yoni steaming. I do not teach
Yep.
doulaing, but I
So,
am a doula.
audience, we're gonna take a quick break, and we're gonna be right. The yoni steaming, right? The yoni steaming, right? Because there's like what I was gonna say on that portion is with the postpartum portion of it, with the healing of the womb and all that type of stuff. So that's what I'm gonna talk. We're gonna come back. So we're gonna take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Upfront Mind, Body, and Soul, where I'm your host, Michelle Bolden Hammond. And I am here with the Goddess Project, my friend, sister friend here, Alexandria Danielle. She is here giving us the tea on this healing, especially with using our private parts, thinking how we should come back to the ancestral role of making this something as a rite of passage where we can do this. So she's all about collaboration, because we did talk about this off the record about some ways to bring these ceremonies back. Because again, it's something that we're missing in our culture. So when you talked about your birth trauma that you just had with Faith, can you provide like a synopsis of the approach that, having a doula with the childbirth support? How important is that?
So it's it goes back to like why I became a doula. And so real quick, I'm just gonna say I be, I became a doula because people around me, the women around me, immediate touch women, not strangers, like my sister, gave birth and there was nobody there for them. When I was in my my third child, right? My third child, my best friend that normally acted as my doula had just had a baby herself. And so it was just me and my partner and my mother, who is a nurse, God bless her. And so in that room with my mother, my partner, and the acting nurse for the hospital, I felt so alone. I remember looking around the room and saying, well, damn, the nurse is here to monitor my signs, and the doctor is here for the baby, and the man's over there asleep on the couch. He's tired of me laboring. And my mother is used to being in charge. She's a nurse. She's used to being in charge.
Right.
And so the compassion that I needed in that moment, she as a nurse was not able to provide me because she's in nurse mode, right? And so the doula, so I became a doula. I tell my clients and friends that I stand in the gap for, that I'm your personal like pit bull, and not in a way that doulas have in some ways the presence of doulas. I'm not going to say doulas themselves. The presence of doulas in hospitals have caused some discomfort because of that kind of statement that I've made. But someone has to be the eyes. Someone has to be the ears in the room. And so having someone there paying attention to what's being said, what's not being said, is important. Someone who understands the medical language, understands the jargon, that's paying attention to facial expressions. It's just, it's the extra eyes, because a lot of the mortalities that have taken place especially with women of color, Black women specifically, are overlooked. Things, women suffering from hemorrhaging. For instance, myself, I had 2 blood transfusions because of hemorrhaging with baby Faith.
Mm.
In those scenarios, if no one is watching, women die.
Right. Right.
You know, if no one is paying attention to simple things, weakness, lethargy, dizziness. I had the postpartum eclampsia. I had all, the nurse said, you had all the things. I had all the things. As a doula, as a nursing assistant, as someone that has had nursing training formally, that has doulaed other people, I still had all the things. So when there's still no way to avoid all the things, having a doula is still someone that can be there to support you through the trauma, that if there is trauma, that can be your eyes, that can advocate for you, that can do things as simple as my sock. The sock, when I go in doula, I take a tube sock. This is a trick, ladies, that even for menstrual cycles, those old school tube socks, you fill that with white rice, tie the end. You can microwave that for 2 minutes. When you are having cramps, it wraps perfectly around your abdomen area. And then if you're a person that has back cramps or you're back laboring because you're in childbirth, you can wrap it around your back. It works wonders. Just as simple as having someone to go and warm your sock up over and over. Because guess what? Policies, like at the hospital I was at having my last baby, the nurses are not allowed to do that for you because you brought that from outside of the hospital. However, I can tell you, after suffering from 4th-degree tears, my daughter was stuck. I had shoulder dystocia. I had surgery. I had all of these things. I ended up having a tubal ligation while I was undergoing all that surgery. Just go ahead and all of that pain. My rice sock was still the most alleviating factor, like period. But the nurses could not warm it up for me. Now some, of course, would because the love in their heart. They're like, you know what, this girl needs the sock. But then there's always the ones that are going to follow the book of the hospital. And so it's the little things, the socks, the foot rubs, the back rubs, the ice packs, the run to Wendy's downstairs because you need some French fries. The midwife is not going to do that for you. That's your doula.
Right. Right. Right.
And even though your best friend or your mother or your sister may have the best intentions and that they can stand in the gap for you, by all means have someone rather than no one. Your doula is there just for you. Whatever your birth plan is, she is there to make sure that they stick to that birth plan to the best of their ability. Now, sometimes there is trauma. In my situation, I had no everything, no episiotomy, no cesarean, no forceps, no this, no that. But if a baby's stuck and that she's not breathing, that whole birth plan is out the window. So now what? What's left on my birth plan? Okay, they don't take the placenta away. So, okay, that's your one job now. Make sure I get my placenta. Make sure daddy can cut the cord. It's that person making sure that the narrative that you have in your head, we can keep it as close to that as possible so that you do not have a trauma story. And if you do have birth trauma, it's not a trauma story.
Yeah.
That's your doula.
Yeah. And look, so speaking of that, when you talked about those things, so now we're into the postpartum phase, right? So you done had the delivery, you're in the postpartum phase. So the benefits of having wound cleaning and wound healing, the benefits of for that procedure to be taking place. Now we know that, you to help with help with emotions. There are particular certain herbs that even when we talked about the yoni stina, there's even certain herbs that can help with fertility, because I know you were saying from the workshop I gathered that one time you was having fertility issues, and there were certain things that you did in the process of that. This is also how you got involved as advocating and stuff. So I know for that someone who is having fertility issues, there are certain remedies that can do place with that. And for those who's coming out of in the postpartum, how often, what would you recommend? How often would someone do this wound healing process after postpartum and after you do your checkups and stuff?
Yes.
I hear rough in the back. That's okay.
Oh my God, to put him out. He was so quiet. Um, yes. So first answer to that. So first, I just want to say, sidebar, 2 days ago, I had a steam baby delivered. I was not available to doula the baby myself because I'm in postpartum myself. But there is a young lady that just had a baby 2 days ago, a baby girl. And I mean, my eyes are welling up because I have been working with this woman since 2019.
Wow.
I mean, I gotta watch my makeup. To help her conceive, she was told by doctors that she had blocked tubes, and they did like the contrast dye. They checked. They were blocked. They told her she would never have a baby. She had her first kid at like 16 and had never had another baby, and she was in her mid-30s when I met her, and married, right? And wanting a baby. And, they told her she couldn't. And so she started steaming with me right before we had that like shutdown year. Okay.
Mhm.
And so when we could open back up, she came every week. She stuck to my plan. It started, we went through phases. And so we started out with, okay, she steamed every week except the week that she was menstruating. And
Right.
then she calls me about 4 months in, and she goes, my period is missing. I don't know what's going on. I'm taking pregnancy tests. I'm not pregnant. And I said, well, I looked at the calendar. I said, well, it's the full moon coming up. I said, well, maybe because you've been steaming, you've synced up with the moon. I was a new moon bleeder. I said, well, maybe you're a full moon bleeder. Maybe you're linked up. And so sure enough, full moon comes, her cycle comes down. She calls me, I'm a pussy goddess. I'm a pussy goddess. I'm linked up with the moon, and I just remember that moment being so big, like it's the small things, and just understanding, okay, I'm in alignment now. And so that was one season. And so then after season of alignment, we went through healing using castor oil packs, her doing Reiki, chakra balancing, us removing, it's ridding the trauma. Because we can get, sometimes infertility is taking place because you need healing first. Sometimes there's things that have happened and you need to remove those things to make space. Sometimes, and forgive me for getting spooky spiritual, but sometimes it's the partner that you're with and your ancestors are like, no, this ain't it. As soon as you leave that situation and get into the next situation, boom, you're pregnant, And so from a holistic standpoint, when you come to a place like me, where I offer Reiki and other things, I'm doing a full body scan. I'm going through and I'm seeing, where are these blockages? What is really going on? Because it could be physical, but it could very well be spiritual. It could be mental. It could be so many things. It could be simple as a vitamin deficiency. But we need to figure that out. We can't just say, oh, your tubes are blocked,
Right.
So we started steaming regularly. We started doing the castor oil pack. She was drinking teas. And I mean, she was just adamant about this. And so she conceived, and we have a beautiful baby girl. She was 7 pounds, 3 ounces. And
I
I'm
love
ready.
it. I
I
love
am
it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
her. And so that's a prenatal kind of, to give you an idea. She started taking prenatal vitamins, and she did everything I said. I keep saying that because people come and they go, oh, I have menstrual cramps. I have the worst cramps ever. What can I do? And I say, well, you need to steam at least twice a month for 3 months, 90 days. Give it 90 days and see how it goes. And most people can't stick to the 90 days,
Right. Right.
and so that's why I said she stuck with it, when she was ready. Okay, let's slow down on the alcohol. So let's start taking prenatal vitamins. It was a process.
Right.
And some people, I hate to say more fertile than others. I don't really like that terminology. Some people can conceive easier than others. And and they may not need that. That doesn't mean that's what's best, you know?
Right. You touched on something too in your conversation when you talked about even with the fertility, but just for those who are not having fertility issues, that it could be something with your partner or who your partner has had. Now, I'm not getting super spooky neither, but these are the facts. And what kills me is, when people talk about when you do Reiki and, what kind of world we in. Everybody has their own little opinion. But to me, I know whose I am. I know who I belong to, and I know that that's a part of the gifts that he has people here for those gifts. So it also, from when you're not healed from going from one relationship to another relationship, and you wonder why you have your mood swings, or because one, you're jumping in the next relationship, and then in between the relationship, you're not giving that space for that neither to heal as well. So you got to look at that too as well. I just, that was another effect with me when you brought that out too at the retreat too, because that's some past stuff that you've been having. And ladies, she knows what she's talking about. So she knows what she's talking about. And I see it all the time. And I'm very transparent myself. When I was younger, we didn't look at it that way. But all those relationships that we had, we got some stuff that we have that's there. That's there. We don't look at it that way because we look at the fun and the feeling and the emotions. But then it long-term effects later on. Why
And
can't
even,
you?
I just want to interject, and even like past decisions. So I know that another trigger warning. I'm going to bring up abortion real quick. I am a person that has participated in abortions in my youth, right?
Right.
And we signed like all this paperwork saying, there could be scar tissue, there could be long lasting effects, there could be whatever, this hemorrhaging, there could be tubes, all these issues, right? And we sign it because we're in a place that, we want to separate from that. And so you mentioned earlier how I started steaming, and so I'm just backtracking the story real quick. I started steaming because I miscarried some twins after having abortion, right? And they say that nothing's wrong, there's nothing wrong. I kept having these phantom cramps, phantom pains, no period disappeared, months are going by, I'm not pregnant. And so that's how I found yoni steaming, to heal myself. This is almost 10 years ago. Now I'm like, time is going. And so that's how I started steaming. However, last year I was going through some healing processes. Again, us healers always have to heal ourselves, and sometimes we heal ourselves last. So by the time we realize that, we're like spiraling, right? And I'm like, crap, I need to tap, I need to Reiki, I need to crystal, I need to drink some herbs. Let me ground myself before I lose it. And so it was one of those moments where I had been working without taking a break for the Goddess Project. Let's be clear, in my healing business, in my wellness business, showing up for women every single day. The business was growing. I myself had serviced over 600 women, and was just like, oh, I'm making an impact. I'm going, it was just so big. And God was like, girl, sit down. You ain't tired yet, and so things started happening, my throat, short of breath, things, nothing's wrong with me. You need to sit down. You need to do some throat chakra work. Oh, girl, you got some heart work to do. I started realizing like I hadn't cried in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like time had passed. And I realized, I looked up, there's a woman named Louise Hay. Are you familiar with Louise Hay? Louise Hay healed my life. Okay, there's a woman, and this book probably came out, I don't know when, but 1900s. And she has a book, and it has the emotional illness, the emotional roots of illnesses, right? And so what I was experiencing in my throat, it talked about suppressed crying.
Suppressed crying, right? Yeah,
And
that release. I studied it as as what I do with overall mind, body, soul health. You're on something. You're on something when you talk about the emotions, because that actually can make your physical signs of
No.
coming along.
So, so I'm getting to the womb part, but it started with the throat. So
Mhm,
my
mhm,
throat, it was like, what's wrong? And I don't got COVID. I don't got the flu. I don't have anything. What is wrong with
mhm,
me? Waking up at my
mhm,
night short. And so I said, I'm having some throat chakra stuff going on that was directly tied to heart chakra. And so a theme came up, and I'm going to talk about this more on my own platform as well, because it's just been it was so eye-opening. And the theme was the lies we tell ourselves to survive.
mm. Wow.
The lies ourselves to survive. And so these things were coming up now. It was like 35 now, I'm 35 years old, and things were coming up I had buried for a long time. And even like I said, the healer, it's like it's that. And I had been lying to myself about the reasons why I had certain abortions.
Mm,
Okay. Because we'll say, oh, I'm doing it because, whatever. Every woman is free to do as they please. So you don't have to have what society considers a good reason. To be clear, everyone, body autonomy, do what's best for you. But for myself, in my own reflections, I realized that I had been lying to myself and others about some of the reasons. And it was a specific scenario, a specific abortion with a specific baby that I knew that baby, that spirit needed healing. It wasn't just the abortion and me healing myself. It was a pregnancy in which I had had a late term abortion because I was in a domestic violence scenario. And
mm,
I always told everyone that the domestic violence scenario was the reason why I had the abortion. And yes, it was very much a huge part of it, but it wasn't like the
yeah.
main reason. It wasn't the own. And so as I started like replaying these stories I had told myself all these years,
Wow.
I was like, girl, no wonder your throat is messed up. And so I started going through doing Reiki on myself, tapping, doing different things, journaling, doing an exercise called The Truth Is, and saying it out loud, even if it was just myself, but needing to say it out loud and not just journal it. Because a lot of times we journal because, it helps the release. But hearing your own voice speak the truth was a different kind of healing. Okay. And so I had to tell myself the truth about myself. And honey, some things moved. I bawled. I cried one day from 5 a.m. to like 11 a.m. I had to call my big brother, who's a year older than me, talk to him. I had to call my stepmother in the Bahamas, talk to her. I said, look, I just need you to pray for me. I don't need, just pray. And she went in prayer warrior mode. And it was just this thing lifted. And I needed to almost spiritually birth this baby. I gave it a name. I gave him a name. I gave him a name because I felt like he needed a name. It was like this whole ceremony process I had to go through. And after that moment, it was like a whole renewed person again, a renewed healer, I have another understanding. It was like another layer now of self-healing to go through to now explain to other people once again, this is how this shit can show up.
Right.
you know
Right.
So I just
That's
wanted to share that because there's so many levels and layers to how we as healers get to where we are, why we show up the way that we do, why we are passionate about the things we're passionate about, and also that we are human. Like, it does not matter how much we study, how many certifications I get, how many people I lay hands on and they say, oh, this is so great. It's
it's still.
you know
And it's not. And look, can I put this disclaimer? And it's
yeah.
not witchcraft, because God has gifted us people who are healers. I'm on a soapbox with that, because I do the sound bowls, and people like, oh, you do those sound bowls, and I'm like, wasn't it? Didn't David use the layer to
Yeah.
song the spirit? Come on, people.
Yes.
Yeah, you gotta have an open mind in some of these things. Aren't the herbs that he gave us from why are you seeing so many people doing herbs now? Why? Because those are beneficial
Well,
for certain things. I'm
first
just,
of all,
I'm still a
Michelle, people need to read their Bible. I think you heard me say that. I think I need to read that. People need to read their Bible, okay? Because they be coming for me and they don't understand that I was brought up Jehovah's Witness and half Jehovah's Witness, half Catholic, right? Because of family split. And what that means is I have
right,
read that Bible so many times, being a Jehovah's Witness. And then being a Catholic, I understand like ritualism and saints and like, intercessory prayer and like those things, a little different.
right.
Anointing oils. So we use some of those things in the non-Catholic Christian faiths, but um, a lot of that stuff has been tabooed and considered and demonized. But if people just read their Bible, it's
Read, yeah, read and do your own research. Don't just assume what you hear. Do your own research because I tell people all the time, I shared a story last week on a podcast last week, and not to say I'm a level 1 practitioner myself, Reiki practitioner. Now, how that happened is I know that he designed me for the gifts of healing. I know that. And I know who's working with me with that because there's a lady and she will share the testimony. Matter of fact, I might have to find her and bring her on the show again. She will share a testimony that I was working in a doctor's office one time. This lady hadn't slept in 18 hours. And not to say that it'll happen all the time, but I listen. I'm in tune with what the spirit says to do. And this lady hadn't slept in 18 hours and she was a pastor's wife.
mm-hmm,
Listen, she was a pastor's wife, Carrot Top, I will call her.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
she hadn't slept in 18 hours. And she said, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I'm supposed to be preaching in jails and stuff where I go to, and I haven't had sleep. One, because she has Lyme disease. One, it was a Lyme disease that she had, and that does a lot to your mental. It does a lot to your immune system. It does a lot. So right then I'm doing the assessment, asking, doing, checking the vitals. And all of a sudden, God was like, touch her. And I was like, you want me to touch her? You know how you question, you say, you want me to touch her? I touched her. Next day, moving forward, next day, the secretary, Felicia was her name. Felicia come running back. Michelle, Miss So-and-so says, whatever you did for her yesterday, she is on her way to the retreat. She done slept for the last 10 hours and she's feeling good and rejuvenated. So this made me reflect back 2 years, last year. I need to look into this. I need to really go do some more research on this. And that's when he used me. There are certain times that he will tell me that it's just a gift of healing. Stop it. Stop saying that everything is the devil. It opens up this and opens up that. Everything is open up because we're in an atmosphere of everything. So
mm-hmm.
just got to have an open mind. Yeah, they come for me too, Alexandria, but that's the price we have to pay. That's the price we have to pay. But
Yes, yes, yeah, and doctrine is like that. I read a lot of different holy books.
right.
Lately I've been diving into Ellen White from the Seventh Day Adventist crowd, and I just read the different readings, and it's not that they're wrong, and it's not that I'm right or wrong, and none of it is right or wrong.
None of it's right or wrong. One thing when I went to Liberty University, I graduated from there with my master's too in human service counseling, and from there, one of the things I can say about the school is that they put on, well, you the champions of Christ. I love that, but they also told us about the worldview. They taught you that we had to learn the different types of religions and different things like that. But I'm so grateful for that because now I have a world view. We're not just beating somebody over the head, with that. But how we're going to win people if we're just down in everything. And you see what's going on now. It's a lot of exposure going on, and what we thought or the people of the high elite and whatever. But it's just a time. And I think there's a big awakening going on. Frequency, sounds, all of that type of
Mhm.
stuff, even in the early, because again, they say history repeats itself. Well, let's talk about that transatlantic movement to here. Master would go down into those quarters and get those teas
Mhm.
from Bruta Mama. I'm just gonna
Mhm.
say from Bruta Mama. He would go get those teas and those herbs from Bruta Mama. But then what we gonna say is witchcraft.
Mhm.
That's how
Mhm.
that came about, and we just need to have a more alert and opening to it. There's herbs in the Bible:
Mhm.
spikenard, myrrh,
Plenty. Hyssop.
frankincense, hyssop. What is that?
Right.
So that's why I say people just got to be aware, because it was, yeah, they tell me I'm off the base too, but it's okay. I know what I'm doing, and it's being effective for such a time as now to help healing. So we're
Yes.
still gonna be on our job to do what we're called to do.
Yes. Yes.
So you any projects coming up, because I will be looking to do something. We talked off a base about that. So any projects coming up, and is there anything that you would like to leave for the audience before we go turn off from this tonight?
Well, I'm in a master's program right now at the University of Florida, studying gender, sexuality, and women studies, learning how to be a good feminist. And so as far as projects, the workshop that is similar to the one that you attended, the vulva, I call it Pussy Petals, my vulva art project. That, like, oh, let me see your pussy. See, let me see. Look at that. Glitter, flowers. I love it. So I am expanding that workshop, taking it on the road this year. A friend of mine from another organization, we're going to be traveling around. So if anyone has, yourself or anyone else wants to host a vulva art workshop or a womb art workshop, I am open for workshops right now. That is my main focus. I'm compiling information because I want to write about vulva art and menstrual art in the future, not under this thesis, but I'm always thinking about what's next. So I'm enjoying this, just touching women and also gathering the images to put together a. I don't even know what it's going to be. If it's going to be a documentary, if it's going to be, but I'm growing with it as I go. And so in this program, I've been studying more about like the 1970s and the 60s and when menstrual art is activism, art being
Okay.
activism, and I'm bringing the Goddess Project closer to the art world because I feel like when people are doing things with their hands and they are creating self portraits of any form, it's a form of embodiment and also it's a form of healing. And then anytime you're doing something with your hands, it makes hard subjects easier to talk about. And so
Yes.
yeah, so that's what I'm doing, just working on workshops. So if anyone wants to collaborate, I'm available to collaborate right now. That's what I'm doing.
So they know I'm the big collaborator, the great networker. So there's something that I'm looking to do in October in Virginia Beach, where we're having a house. We're actually in the works of that. So if that's something that we can get you to, we can actually do that as a workshop, because I get tired of talking all the time. I get tired of doing all that. I need somebody to feed. I'm like you. This healer needs healing too. Or overload. So we'll connect about that. We'll connect on about that. So again, it has, and then I also forgot to tell the audience, look, she's so good at what she does. The universities is using her for doing about trauma care. So again, for you people who are clinical, she might be someone that you can need to connect with, especially for those who have been rape victims or sexual assaults, things like that. So she is profound and knows what she's doing. So Alexandra, I want to say thank you so much for coming on tonight. And here is her information. Go look her up. She got some good stuff for you. Go buy her journaling book. So here we go. We got all her information right here. And look for her because Upfront Mind, Body, and Soul, we definitely going to be doing a collaboration together. So if you like what you hear, we appreciate it. And I know you have to get the faith, so I'm not going to roll this on too much longer. So, anything
Thank you
else you would like to leave?
for having me. I just want to remind everyone, be your own advocate. If you think something's wrong, it's wrong. Don't let anyone tell you it's in your head. Put
Yes,
self.
yes. Yes. So, audience, until next week, listen, next week, we're going to be having me being interviewed on my own show from a student from Marymount who is in clinical mental health. And she actually was coming to the event of my documentary, Polished, Posture, and Poise. But she will be, next week, we'll be featuring her. Delia Josan, who was from Marymount University. So that'll be very exciting to hear us talk about the multiculturalism and the disparities when it comes down to mental health and advocating for what's right, even in the clinical sectors of therapies and counselors and stuff like that. So it's some good stuff coming up. We're moving right along. And again, I'm your host, Michelle Bolden Hammond. And until next week, stay blessed. And if no one has told you or you felt that you're loved, just know that you are loved here at the Upfront Mind, Body, and Soul. Take care.